Hello, my name is Michael. I'm a sophomore at RCSJ. I am an accounting major, and today for speech 2 I'll be explaining fantasy sports, specifically fantasy football, fantasy baseball, basketball, hockey, daily fantasy sports, everything along the lines of fantasy sports. I've participated in fantasy sports for as long as I can remember, probably since middle school. Probably 7th, 8th grade when I first started. Me and my friends we started with fantasy basketball, and it progressed into doing almost every single sport, every single season. So the definition of a fantasy sport, it's a type of game often played using the internet where participants assemble imaginary or virtual teams of real players of a professional sport. So what that exactly means is you pick a sport, so say for football, for example, and you have a draft with, whoever's in the league. There's certain rounds of the draft, depending on how many players there are, how many, picks there are each round. Everybody picks a player, whatever's available, whatever you want, and as somebody gets picked, they go away. These teams compete based on the statistical performance of those players in the actual games. This performance is converted into points that are compiled and totaled according to a roster selected by each fantasy team's manager. So depending on how well a player does or how bad a player does depends on how many points they get. So if a player, for football, for example, if a quarterback throws 3 touchdowns and throws for 400 yards, they're going to put up a substantial more amount of points than somebody who throws 1 touchdown or throws for 80 yards or doesn't throw any touchdowns. The points are all determined on how well you do. It's all based off performance. So there's many ways you can do fantasy sports. People do it with business partners, coworkers, friends, family, etc. You do it with whoever you like, whoever you can start a league with. It's more common with friends and families, I guess you could say. Friends-wise, people do it where the winner will win a certain amount of money. So each person puts in $20, $50, $100, however much they decide on. And at the end of the 16-week season, there's a playoff. So there's a playoff where there's one round of semifinals and then there's a final. So the winner of that, wins the money, whatever was agreed upon in the league. And fantasy is such a big deal because in most leagues, the loser has to face some sort of punishment. So for mine, it's more of an embarrassment punishment. But I've seen stuff online where people go and get tattoos or, they have to do crazy stunts in public, which is, publicity and embarrassment and stuff like that. So people do take it pretty serious, especially when there's money involved, serious money at least. People are betting, 100 or more on a league, and the payout's well over $1,000. It's a pretty big deal for people. So a little history on fantasy sports, like the concept of picking players and such. The concept of picking players and running a contest based on their year-to-year dates has been around since after World War II. One of the first, fantasy sports published leagues involved an Oakland businessman and one-time Oakland Raiders limited player, Wilford Bill Winkenbach. He designed fantasy golf in the later part of the 1950s. Each player selected a team of professional golfers, and the person with the lowest combined total number of strokes would win. So that's just how golf works. Lower strokes it takes you to play all your rounds is whoever wins more. So there's 2 types of fantasy. There's a seasonal fantasy, and there's more of a daily fantasy. So the seasonal fantasy is an entire season. So for example, for football, for a seasonal fantasy for football, that's the entire season. So, that runs from week 1 to week 16 to the whole entire season. The players play out the entire season. For a daily fantasy, it's daily. So, or it could be weekly. It could be daily or weekly, but they kind of link together. Daily fantasy is where you go on to an app and you pick a team. All players are available for who are playing that night. So say for baseball, I played daily fantasy baseball plenty of times. Whoever's playing that night, depending on the teams, all the players are listed. They're available, and you pick a player per position. So you pick a pitcher, catcher, first baseman, second baseman, all that. And then depending on how they play, they earn you points, and the person with the most points wins. So you can do that where you set up your own league, where you can join leagues for money. People play for crazy amounts of money daily, which is pretty cool. Or you can do a weekly thing where all the players are listed for the teams that are playing that week for whatever sport, and you pick it that way, and again, the team with the most points wins. So not only are fantasy sports fun for the average person like me or you, and of course money is definitely involved. People are betting, trying to win money, people lose money, blah, blah, blah. Now for the people running these sports things, especially for the daily fantasy sports, the websites and the sports and the teams are making more money too. In 2019 alone, there was $335 million in revenue generated from daily fantasy sports. So these websites, making these daily sports available are making out. People are playing it. People enjoy it. People want to play it. People are putting money out there and they're dedicating their time to it. And that's very important for these websites. It's getting into a pretty big industry. The fantasy world is really evolving and it's good to see. Now, not only does fantasy, bring a sense of enjoyment or something to look forward to every week, especially for football, every Thursday, Monday, Sunday, whatever, whenever your players are playing, whatever day. It really does have an effect on people. It does take a toll. Friendships do get ruined over it, unfortunately. People really do get into it and they get serious and they fight and blah, blah, blah. And somebody doesn't make this trade with somebody and people get aggravated, but overall, it really does build friendships, especially that's what I've seen in my personal experience. My closest friends, we all do fantasy, and, it gives us something to do. We all like hanging out on the days that football is on, and we get to watch, and most of us always have at least somebody playing, which is good. We can root for that player and, see what happens and who's playing who, blah, blah, blah. And it's the way that you take it. So, we do it for more fun. Yeah, there's money involved. Yeah, there's punishments involved for the loser, blah, blah, blah. But all in all, it really does build friendship, and it's something very, very, very fun to do. I would just like to thank everybody for their time and attention. I do appreciate you guys listening. I really hope you took something out of this. At least understand just the difference between a daily fantasy sport and a seasonal fantasy sport and why they're so important and why people do take it serious. The money aspect is a big thing, but again, the friendships created from it are very, 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 very important. It's a lifelong thing too, and it's cool seeing, it'll be cool to see how long our league lasts. It's now lasted about 4 years, and don't see any plans for it to stop, so hopefully it can continue on for many more years to come. And I hope maybe this inspire people to maybe start a fantasy team, maybe for next football season, or, for daily fantasy sports that are running right now for all sports, football, basketball, hockey, baseball, blah, 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 whatever. But I really do hope you guys took something out of this, and I appreciate you guys listening and taking your time out of your day to understand what fantasy sports are. So thank you.